Okay. Okay, so we are coming to the very end of dependent origination. Yeah, I'm going to have a look at the last couple of factors. I think the timing is quite good. It looks like we're going to be just about right for what we have left to do, which is excellent. So we've just had a look at the idea of existence, and then we come to the very end here. So we have the very last part here, now page 31 of the booklet. Existence is the condition for birth or rebirth. Birth is the condition for old age and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering here. With the cessation of existence, there is the cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, there is the cessation of old age and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering here. And then we have the analysis here, just below, of these factors on the path. And what bhikkhus is birth? Birth of the various beings into various orders of beings. Their being born, descent into the womb, production, the manifestation of the aggregates, the obtaining of the sense bases. This is called birth. What bhikkhus is old age and death? The old age of various beings in various orders, their growing old, the brokenness of teeth, the greyness of hair, the wrinkling of the skin, the decline of vitality, degeneration of the faculties. This is called old age. The passing away of various beings from various orders of beings, their perishing, the breakup, the disappearance, the mortality, the death, the completion of time, the breakup of the aggregates, the laying down of the carcass. This is called death. This is old age, and this death are called together old age and death. And you may wonder why. What is the point of all this? It's kind of a bit over the top. Do we really need to know old age? Yes, it is the graying of the hair and all this kind of stuff. We know that. Why say it so in such detail? Don't we know this already? And the problem is, and this is one of the things you realize in when you have been dealing with Buddhism a long time, is that these teachings are so easy to misrepresent and misunderstand. Yeah, it's so hard sometimes to be sure to get the right teachings. And very often, for example, with dependent origination, one of the arguments very often is that when birth, the meaning of birth, is not the literal meaning of birth, it's a metaphorical meaning of birth. It means the birth of the mind moment. The mind moment comes into existence, yeah? And then the mind moment passes away. It becomes old and it dies. And so then the question is, which one is right? Are they both right, or are they not right? And this is why these kind of definitions become so important in a sense, because it makes it very clear what is actually meant by these things. And here it's very clear what is meant is the literal meaning of being born into this world, literal meaning of old age, and the literal meaning of death. In the Abhidhamma, it's sometimes a little bit different. There they add another interpretation of these things. They use this in a metaphorical sense, yeah, not to mean the literal thing. And that's an Abhidhammic development, and it specifically says in the Abhidhamma that this is the Sutta approach, yeah, so this is from the Suttas, this is the Abhidhamma, it's different, it's an alternative way of looking at these things. But if you want to stick to the word of the Buddha, if you want to stick to, the Suttas as they are, this is the meaning in the Suttas. This is quite interesting, I think an important point. And for me, I always, I try as best as I can to read the suttas to figure out what the Buddha meant by these things. That is what I'm interested in. What later generations thought about it is not so interesting as far as I'm concerned. So what is going on here? And we have already talked about this quite a bit, yeah. And what is going on, as I mentioned before, is this idea that our mind is conditioned by how we live our life. Yeah, we talked about before about cravings. It means you take up things in the world, and then you live in a certain way. And that entire way that you live is basically, it relates to your mind state. But then also, because you are in the sensual realm, let's say that, the Buddha talks about the three kinds of existence: sensual existence, form sphere existence, and immaterial sphere existence. Within that framework, it's possible to live that life in many subways within that. Yeah, there's many kind of subsidiary levels within each one of those. So you can live in the sensual existence in a kind way. You can live a kind sensual life, yeah, like most of us, or you can live a brutal sensual life. If because of your background or whatever it is, and that of course will affect precisely our level of consciousness, whether you feel good about yourself, you feel bad about yourself, or whatever it is in between. So our existence, how we live, decides the level of our consciousness, and then when we die, that consciousness just continues in to the next life. You have already established yourself in this life at a certain level. It carries on. You get reborn into that realm. I have to be careful, otherwise my glasses are going to die as well. This is the metaphorical death. Yeah, they kind of break and things happen. So this is birth. Yeah, and once you are born, what happens then? That's it. You're finished. Yeah, that's it. Born. That is, you are trapped. Nothing you can do once you're born. Once you're born, you're going to die. Yes, when you see the little baby, you know, okay, death is awaiting for you. Sorry, but that's the truth. Yeah, that's life. That's the way it goes. So where there is youth, there's old age. Where there's birth, there has to be death. These things have to come together, and this is how this whole mass of suffering comes as a consequence. Yes, that's dependent origination of view. It is a very subtle teaching here, but I hope that the way I've been explaining it makes a little bit of sense to you. It has kind of opened maybe a few windows to how these things work. And it's really enough, plenty enough, what I've been talking about to kind of get a feeling for these things. Make it practical. Don't make it too theoretical. And then it can become something very useful in your life. If I have time, I will have a little bit of a look also at the cessation sequence, yeah, when things cease, and just to very quickly see how that works out. By the cessation sequence, I mean avidya at the beginning comes to an end. You have vidya. What happens then with sankhara? What happens with vijnana and all these things? But before we get to that, I want to have a look at these other little suttas. And the next one is directly about the process of rebirth. Yeah, and it's kind of cute. So we'll have a look at this one here. When monks, King Yama has questioned, this is in the middle of the sutta, that's why it's strange, starts in a strange way, has questioned, examined, and addressed him. This is the person who has died, that's him, yeah, the fellow who has died. Thus, concerning the second divine messenger, he again questions and examines and addresses that man about the third divine messenger, saying, "Didn't you ever see, my good man, the third divine messenger appearing among humankind?" "No, Lord, I did not see him." "But, my good man, didn't you ever see a woman or a man, 1, 2, or 3 days dead, the corpse swollen, discolored, and festering?" "Yes, Lord, I have seen this." "Then, my good man, didn't it occur to you, an intelligent and mature person, I too am subject to death. I cannot escape death. Let me now do noble deeds by body, speech, and mind." "No, Lord, I could not do it. I was negligent. I was pamada. Yeah, I was heedless." This famous word pamada. There you are. This is what pamada means. "Through negligence, my good man, you have failed to do noble deeds by body, speech, and mind. Well, you will be treated as befits your negligence. That evil action of yours was not done by your mother or father, brothers, sisters, friends, or companions, nor by relatives, devas, ascetics, or Brahmins. But you alone have done that evil deed, and you will have to experience the fruit." Ooh. Imagine that situation. You have died, yeah. And when you die, the question here is, of course, is this meant literally? Is this actually what happens when we die? Is there a King Yama who kind of interrogates us in this way? And I think the answer is probably no. This is not exactly what happens. This is like a metaphor for what happens. It's not a literal meaning. That's my guess, because simply some of the suttas are metaphorical. It's important to understand that. But we do know it's quite common when people die. Yeah, what is a common thing that happens when people die? Very often, what people do, they have like a life review when they die. Have you read about that? People having a life review. They have a near-death experience, and they kind of almost finished, but then somehow they are revived. And when they're revived, I think all of these things happen to them. And one of the very common experience is a life review. And I know several people to whom this has happened, who are almost dead. And you see your whole life in a quick review. It happens like in a flash of a sec, very, very fast, but you see your whole life. And when you see your whole life like that, it's almost like you are just an onlooker, You see yourself like not as this is me, but as if you are a judge of your own life. You see all the qualities, what you have done which is good, that which you have done which is bad, and that which is neutral in between. And then based on that, you judge yourself. Because you know what you have done, whether it was good or bad. You know how you've lived. And the person who sends you to a good destination, the person who sends you back to humanity, the person who sends you to a bad destination, it's only you. You are King Yama. You are the judge. You are the person who decides whether you deserve to be reborn in a good destination or not. And this is kind of the power of this, And this is what I mean, that when you look at your mind right now, if you look at your life, how you feel about your actions, how you feel about your actions now is going to be somewhat similar to how you feel about it when you pass away. So if you have regret, then overcome that regret now. Now is the opportunity. Otherwise, when you stand in front of the judge yourself, as you are dying, you are going to have to judge yourself in a bad way, and you will send yourself to that bad or that good destination or to humanity. So if you look at this passage carefully, you will see that King Yama, he doesn't judge you in any way. King Yama doesn't say you are now going to go to hell. So King Yama is almost like a substitute here. He doesn't actually, King Yama is not, he just reminds you, just like your conscience reminds you, King Yama doesn't actually have any power to do anything. The power is in your mind. The power is part of your conscience. That is what is happening here. So this is how this works out, So your level of your mind, and then you make this judgment at the very end, and then bang, you go on and you get reborn as a consequence. It's interesting, isn't it? So this is why it is so important to live well now, so you can judge yourself properly when you come to this particular situation. So that is that little sutta. There's a lot of interesting information on near-death experiences out, if you want to read about it. And I think, generally speaking, it fits fairly well with Buddhist ideas. Nothing really that contradicts the Buddhist ideas about rebirth. And one of the things that you almost always see, of course, in popular accounts is that someone that goes to this go in the intermediate state, you are released from your body, but you haven't yet been reborn in a future state. You may have heard of this typical things that happen is that if you cross a certain line or you go beyond a certain point, then there is no return again. That which is in between there seems to be roughly equivalent to the antara bhava, the intermediate existence, the bardo, as they call it in the Tibetan tradition. So it kind of fits with, and very often these are very positive experiences, People feel very light, they feel very happy. There's a kind of the tunnel with the white light and the end of this kind of stuff. And that's all seems to be part of the rebirth experience. So that is the idea of rebirth and the idea of King Yama. King Yama. So, then, the next thing I want to have a look at is just the idea of suffering in in samsara, samsaric suffering, what it actually means. Why is rebirth such a problem? Yeah, sometimes people think that rebirth is great. Yeah, I'm going to continue afterwards. But from a Buddhist point of view, that's a misunderstanding of what things are like. And there's a large number of suttas found in the Samyutta Nikaya, called in the Anamatagga Samyutta, the Samyutta on without discoverable beginnings. And there's a large number of suttas that are very similar, that kind of describe the stark realities of samsaric existence. So many of you will have heard of these suttas before, and sometimes they can seem quite harsh, so just to consider them. No need to kind of make any final decision whether it's right or not, but at least consider these particular suttas. Now this sutta is called Tears. At Savatthi, because this samsara is without discoverable beginning. The first point is not discerned of beings roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. What do you think, bhikkhus? Which is more, the stream of tears that you have shed as you roamed and wandered on through this long course, weeping and wailing because of being united with the disagreeable and separated from the agreeable? This, or the water in the four great oceans? As we understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, the stream of tears that we have shed as we roamed and wandered through this long course, weeping and wailing because of being united with the disagreeable and separated from the agreeable, this alone is more than the water in the four great oceans. So there you are. So it's quite stark, yeah. There's quite a number of tears in the four great oceans. It's quite a large number, yeah. If you start counting them, whoa, you kind of get scary. Yeah? And so there's a lot of kind of a problem. This is the problem of samsaric existence, and this is why it is worthwhile kind of getting out of it, because it is an ongoing problem like this. And what you see here, of course, in here is very similar to what we saw in the previous suttas, the idea of it being without discoverable beginning. Samsara is without discoverable beginning, rebirth is without discoverable beginning, ignorance or delusion is without discoverable beginning. These are all just different ways of looking at the same thing. The idea of existence being itself being without discoverable beginning. And the idea of roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance, fettered by craving. This random movement, you're blind, you don't know what you're doing. Craving is dragging you by the nose. And then we have this wonderful and amazing actually idea of what is actually happening here. And the Buddha says, good bhikkhus, it is good that you understand the Dhamma taught by me in such a way. The stream of tears that you have shed as you roamed and wandered through this long course, weeping and wailing because of being united with the disagreeable and separated from the agreeable. This alone is more than the water of the four great oceans. For a long time, bhikkhus, you have experienced the death of a mother. As you have experienced this, weeping and wailing because of being united with the disagreeable and separated from the agreeable, the stream of tears that you have shed is more than the water in the four great oceans. For a long time, bhikkhus, you have experienced the death of a father, the death of a brother, the death of a sister, the death of a son, the death of a daughter, the loss of relatives, the loss of wealth, the loss through illness. As you have experienced this, weeping and wailing because of being united with the disagreeable, separated from the agreeable, the stream of tears that you have shed is more than the water in the four great oceans. For what reason, bhikkhus? Because this samsara is without discoverable beginning. It is enough to experience revulsion towards all formations, enough to become dispassionate towards them, enough to be liberated from them. So there you are, and The Buddha has a number of suttas that are very similar in a sense in this particular part of the Samyutta Nikaya, which kind of draws out the starkness, the stark reality of samsaric existence. One of the other suttas, this is kind of one of the milder ones in a sense. I don't want to shock people too much, in case you walk out of here and never see you again. But there is another one which talks about how much blood you have shed, in the time through being reborn as an animal and then having your head cut off, and these kind of things. And again, it's compared. The amount of blood you have shed is similar again to the amount of water in the 4 great oceans, or more than that. It's actually more because it goes on for so long. Another nice sutta in there is the simile of the stick. The simile of the stick, says the Buddha, is that you never really know exactly where you're going to get reborn next. Often there's a degree of uncertainty to it. The Buddha says it's like a stick. When you throw a stick up, the stick goes round and round, and when it lands, you can never be sure which end it's going to land on. In the same way, you get reborn here, you get reborn there, up and down in samsara. This doesn't mean that karma doesn't work. Karma works. Karma works in several ways. It works by weighing the stick. So one stick gets very heavy and very weighted. So then you get much greater chance of being reborn in a good realm if you live well. The other end of the stick may be very light, so no chance of getting reborn there. And if you practice well enough, you're almost absolutely certain to be reborn in a good destination as a consequence. But what it doesn't mean is that in the long run, you can expect to be reborn in a bad destination every now and again, in a good destination at other times. And the reason for that is because in this life, you may be living very well. You may be heading towards a good destination in the future because you happen to be practicing the Buddhist path. But why are you practicing the Buddhist path in this life? And this is one of the things I have been kind of saying all along. The reason you have been practicing the Buddhist path in this life is because you have been conditioned in this way. You have somehow come across the word of the Buddha, you've been reading the suttas, you have been kind of conditioned in this way. But how are you going to be conditioned in your next life? Okay, so maybe you will be a Buddhist for a few lives, but what about 10 lifetimes down the track? How are you going to be conditioned? Maybe you will be a suicide bomber, Somebody's got to be the suicide bomber, is there? It's got to be somebody. It could be us. The point is, with the right conditioning, everyone is capable of being a suicide bomber. When you see the people in the world who do this kind of thing, sometimes you think they are really bad and evil people. And in one way, they are bad and evil, but we all have the potential of being bad and evil people. If you look inside of yourself and you see your mind, sometimes you realize that even though you are good, sometimes bad thoughts come up, and you realize the potential is there in all of us to do these kind of things, and that is the problem. So the simile of stick means that yes, in this life, you're going to have a good rebirth, down the track, you just have no idea because you don't know what conditioning is going to kind of condition you and make your life different. And for that reason, sometimes on one end, sometimes on the other end, the stick will fall back and forth and you get reborn in different places. That is the simile of the stick. It's hard to see. It's hard to see again because of the sense of self. It seems like we have direction in our life, but actually that direction is far less certain than we think it is. So that is the simile of the tears we have shed. There's another simile in there as well, in this particular sutta, a very famous one, which says that in this long lifetime, it is we have been reborn. It's hard to find anyone in the world who hasn't at some stage been our mother, father, son, daughter, spouse probably. It's very hard to find that. And so in a sense, and this is actually quite a nice teaching, I like this teaching, because one of the kind of most important things on the Buddhist path is the idea of being able to relate to other people, how to have compassion for others, how to be able to kind of overcome our anger sometimes and negativity about the things that happen in the world. And if you start to think like that everyone, around here has probably been my son or daughter, mother or father in the past. Once you look at people like that, it changes your attitude to people very powerfully. Because just as it says in the Metta Sutta, as a mother loves her only child, why is it that the mother has such ability to love her only child? And the reason is because a mother, regardless of what the child does, will always have the memories of the child, the good side of the child. A mother has a very good understanding of her children. She has seen them growing up. She knows all the different parts of their personality. She will always remember the good parts. And because she always remembers the good parts, even if the child turns out really badly, she will still love that child, even if maybe not absolutely always, but usually she will still love the child regardless of what happens. This is the power of the motherly love, and in a sense we can learn so much from that, because we can also remind ourselves, well, actually these people out there, I've been their relative at some stage. Am I able to have that motherly kind of view and remind myself of the good qualities in that person? I'm getting really sidetracked now from the main issue, but it's such a beautiful thing, because such a beautiful thing, these are kind of practical things that we can use to overcome the impurities of our mind, and that's why they are so useful. And actually from this particular Samyutta, that idea is taken, and that's why I'm bringing it out now, because of that. But that is just a positive take on these things, and then, but obviously the main picture here is one that is very kind of stark. And then when you start to realize this, that's when you get revulsion towards all formations. All conditioned phenomena start to seem, oh no, don't want to go there anymore. And then you turn away from that world. And when you turn away from it, craving, eventually desire, even desire to exist, just evaporates. And then eventually you are liberated. What are you liberated from? From suffering. It's a good deal. Dhamma is good. Dhamma liberates you from suffering. People often want to know, what is Nibbana? What exactly does it mean? What happens when I get to Nibbana? Am I going to be there to enjoy it? Am I not going to be there? Forget about all that. It's the end of suffering. Isn't that good enough? It's the highest kind of happiness. Are you not satisfied with the highest kind of happiness? If you want more than the highest kind of happiness, what you're going to get is suffering. I'm sorry to say that, but that's actually the reality of it. So this is what this is all about. So that is the Tir Sutta for you, and I'm not going to say anything more about that. Now what I want to do is to have a look at another sutta. This is called the Majjhima Nikaya 38, the Greater Discourse on the Destruction of Craving, the Mahatthana Sankaya Sutta. And what is nice about this sutta, this is only a very small extract from it, but what is nice about it is that it shows us a real-life example of how dependent origination works. So this is how it actually works out in real life. So quite interesting for that reason. So let's have a quick look at this. Because the descent of the embryo takes place through the union of three things. Here there is the union of mother and father, but the mother is not in season, and the Gandhabba is not present. In this case, no descent of an embryo takes place. Here there is union of mother and father, and the mother is in season, but the Gandhabba is not present. In this case too, no descent of the embryo takes place. But when there is union of mother and father, and the mother is in season, and the Gandhabba is present, through the union of these three things, the descent of the embryo takes place. Descent of the embryo just means that conception happens. That's what it basically means in this case. So here, what is interesting here is this idea of the Gandhabba. You've probably heard of Gandhabbas before, or Gandhabba. Gandhabba is sometimes the heavenly musicians, are the Gandhabbas. They're a type of devas that live, that kind of amuse Sakka. If you want some musicians to come, they get the Gandhabbas to play music. So this is one thing they are. But the Gandhabbas are actually more than that. The Gandhabbas are also, in this case, what they represent is the consciousness or the being who has passed away, who is kind of in the intermediate state, awaiting to be reborn. This is what the Gandhabba actually refers to here. So this is another sutta which really points out to this idea of intermediate existence, antarabhava, that there is such a thing as the intermediate existence. This sutta too points to that idea. So that is the meaning of Gandhabba in this particular case. So what this sutta is saying is that you need these three things, for conception to happen, for a new life to arise in the mother's womb. This is actually what is required. And I think it's fairly obvious. The only one which is kind of slightly controversial here is this idea of the Gandhabba. The Gandhabba must be present. First thing, from a dependent origination point of view, it makes good sense. The consciousness is there from the past life, and then rebirth happens. This is really what we are seeing here. So one of the important points with this is that this sutta makes it very clear that when we talk about Paticca Samuppada, and we will see later on that this is what this is about. Actually, the whole sutta is about that. It's very clear from this that it is about rebirth process, Gandhabba, and then conception happening. The rebirth process of what it is about. So this is one of those pointers that point to that. But the other thing which is slightly interesting, is a bit tangential to what I want to talk about, but it's still interesting, is, well, these three things have to be there for conception. Does that mean that as soon as conception happens, that straight away there is life there? This has consequences for things like abortion. If you have an abortion and a Gandhabba is already present, if the consciousness has already arisen, well, then in a sense you are killing this little being. And so this has very profound consequences for the Buddhist idea of abortion. Is abortion bad or good or intermediate from a Buddhist point of view? This is one of these, I think, very significant ethical questions. And one of the things to know about this particular way of presenting it, this presentation here seems to be a presentation that Buddhism, one of those few things that Buddhism inherited from the Brahmanical culture. Buddhism never actually mentions specifically what the Buddha's point of view is about this, but there is a sutta later on in the Majjhima Nikaya, I think it's Majjhima Nikaya 98 or something like that, which talks about exactly the same thing, the three things coming together. But there it is presented as a Brahmanical view, as a view that already existed in the Indian culture at the time. So it looks to me as if this is just a view that was accepted. Basically, the Buddhists took it on board as an approximation to reality, and that it was. But actually, it was a view that came from the existing culture at that particular time. And the reason I say that is because there is a lot of what I would consider anecdotal evidence. You hear about people's remembering their past lives and all these things. And when people remember their past lives, sometimes they are able to remember the whole process of what is happening here. And sometimes they remember being kind of reborn into their mother's womb. And when they're reborn in the mother's womb, it looks like, from this anecdotal evidence, it can happen at many different stages during the pregnancy here, not necessarily at the very beginning here. And so I think that this is, I still feel that this is ambiguous. It is not clear that this means that the Gandhabba is necessarily present, vijnana arise at the very beginning, but it may actually be later on. So this is important because, of course, it matters. If you want to avoid killing any living beings, then it matters whether there's consciousness there or not. If there is no consciousness, you're not killing anyone. If there is consciousness, well, then you are killing a living being. So it makes a big difference. So I would say that the earlier in a pregnancy, if you want to terminate a pregnancy, have an abortion, the earlier you do it, the less chance there is that you're actually killing anything. This is really what this comes down to. I cannot guarantee that you won't kill anything. It's very hard to guarantee these things because it's so subtle. It seems like consciousness can arise at many different places. It's very hard to know. But at least if you're going to do it, the earlier you do it, the better off you are in terms of karma, in terms of doing the right thing. That is one aspect of abortion. Now, since we're talking about abortion anyway, it's also the other thing that I think is important to realize is that in Buddhism, it always matters the kind of being that we kill is a very important part of the karma that you're making. If you kill a big animal, like an elephant compared to a mosquito, it's worse to kill an elephant than killing a mosquito. Yeah, if you kill a human being compared to killing a fly, yeah, much worse to kill a human being, of course. Also because human beings are just higher beings in general. So the size of the animal, the size of the thing also is very, very significant. And of course, when it comes to abortion, the earlier on you do it, the less kind of a being it is, the less ability it has to kind of experience any negative consequences for that. So it is less bad for that reason. So these are just to take away some of the kind of stigma of abortion. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I think ideally we should avoid these things, but it is not necessarily as bad as it sometimes is made out to be. It doesn't have to be some terrible thing, yeah. And usually it's a very difficult decision to make anyway. So sometimes I think it's much more important that we try to support people who get themselves into a difficult situation rather than be too quick to judge when the situation, after all, actually is quite ambiguous in these cases. This is a little bit about that, and simply because I always prefer the compassionate approach. The compassionate approach is always the right one in these things. And that is really what I want to bring out here. If you want to ask about this later on, please do so, because I think it is a very important topic, because it touches so many people, this issue here. But anyway, we're talking about dependent origination here. So, consciousness in past life, the Gandhabba. Then you have the rebirth, yeah? The arising of Nama Rupa in the next life. This is what we are seeing here. The mother then carries the embryo in her womb for 9 or 10 months with much anxiety as a heavy burden. At the end of 9 or 10 months, the mother gives birth with much anxiety as a heavy burden. Then, when the child is born, she nourishes it with her own blood. For the mother's breast milk is called blood in the noble one's discipline. Not sure exactly why that is, but anyway, that's what it has here. When that child grows up and his faculty matures, the child plays at such games as toy plows, tip-cat, somersaults, toy windmills, toy measures, toy cars, and toy bow and arrow. Yeah, so they played with toy cars 2,500 years ago. They play with toy cars today. Yeah, nothing has changed so much. So there you are. That's what children do. So what is happening here, and what you're seeing here? Of course, you're starting to see the process that is happening as you of dependent origination process. Yeah, the child feels happy when it plays with these things, so it craves for that thing, and when it craves for it, it takes up all of these games. Playing these games is like taking them up, yeah, attaching to them. This is what is happening here. You see the process of dependent origination happening here. Then he grows up and his faculties mature still further. The youth enjoys himself, provided and endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, with forms visible by the eye, sounds cognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body, that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of lust. So here, again, a similar kind of thing. You're looking for happiness in the world, looking for pleasure in the world. You are contacted by all of these things. Your faculties mature, yeah? As your faculties mature, here meaning the senses, you're able to enjoy yourself in the world in various ways. You contact the world. When you contact the world, you feel. When you feel, you crave. When you crave, you indulge in these things. You take up various pursuits that ensure that you get your satisfaction of sensual pleasures. And that is what is happening here. The whole process of dependent origination is really what is meant and by this. On seeing a form with the eye, yeah, this is the contact happening. You see a form. First of all, you have the sense base. Yeah, first of all, you are reborn in a certain area. This is nama rupa and consciousness. Then you have the sense bases. Yeah, seeing a form with the eye. The contact happens. Yeah, and then if you like that form, if it is pleasing means you have a positive feeling with it. When you have a positive feeling for it, you desire it. It says here you lust after it, you desire it. If it is not pleasing, then you dislike it, you have aversion towards it, you want to get rid of it. This is all the craving happening here. He abides with mindfulness of the body unestablished, with a limited mind, and he does not understand as it actually is the deliverance of mind and the deliverance by wisdom, wherein those bad, unwholesome qualities cease without remainder. So the mindfulness of the body here, unestablished, the idea here is just that you haven't got sense restraint, yeah? So mindfulness of the body means that you are kind of grounded. You don't allow your mind to kind of just flow out into the world, but you kind of bring it back into the present moment. Yeah, you're kind of within yourself, so to speak. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're contemplating the 31 parts of the body all the time or anything like that. It means you have a present moment awareness established, and you have a limited mind. The limited mind, because it is confined by sensuality. This is one of the things you find as you practice meditation, practice more profoundly, is that you feel like your mind is being freed from things. Your mind is expanding, yeah? You know what it's like when you don't have any defilements in the mind? The mind feels much freer, much more open, much more expansive. The more stronger your greed is, the stronger your desire is, the more narrow your mind feels, the more kind of you feel more selfish. What does the selfishness feels like? Selfishness feels small. It feels narrow. It feels like self-occupied. My little world. Yeah, stay away. This is my things. Don't think I'm not going to give you anything. This is mine. It's a small mind. When you feel generous and you feel your mind opening up to the world around you, it's like you are opening up. It's like your mind expanding, taking in other people. Yeah, the feeling of kindness towards others is a very beautiful state of mind when you open up to the world. So the narrow mind is the selfish mind. The open and beautiful mind is the one which takes in other people, has kindness, compassion, generosity, and all these kind of qualities. It's very important to notice these things, because if you notice these things, the distinction between the defiled mind compared to the mind which is not defiled, you start to see the beauty and how pleasant it is, how nice it is to have these kind of mind states. They are far superior. People are greedy, but really that greed which they have is actually unpleasant. Yeah, people think that I'm going to look after myself. Yeah, that's what people think when they are greedy. Yeah. They think I need to look after my own life so I don't kind of fall on hard times and all these kind of things. But actually, it's a very unpleasant state, and people just haven't got the idea of anything larger or better than that. And this is what is happening here. So you enjoy your sensual pleasures, but because of that you attach. Because you attach, you become greedy. You start guarding these things. There's one very nice paragraph in the Mahanidana Sutta, Digha Nikaya 15, which I haven't been reading out to you, but maybe I should, which shows you how from desire, from greed, actually we get into violence. Yeah, we get into violence. Why? Because we designate the world into mine and yours and other people, and we want more all the time. And we want to, when we look after our things, when we become greedy about them, we get into conflict with others very often. Yeah, our parents die, and then we have to kind of try to share out the inheritance, and then we fight over the inheritance, and we get violent as a consequence. And a lot of violence in the world comes from these desires and greeds and problems. So all of that is related to the limited mind that you have because you haven't done the sense restraint. You haven't had this, what is called here, the mindfulness of the body. And you haven't understood that deliverance of the mind, the Cheta Vimutti, deliverance by wisdom, Panya Vimutti, which is the jhana states, first of all, that the Cheta Vimutti is the jhana states, where those bad, unwholesome qualities cease without remainder. When you attain a jhana, then you have gone beyond all of this sensuality for the first time in your life. Yeah, this is why these jhana states, the samadhi, is so powerful. The translation is a bit unfortunate. Evil, I don't think evil is quite right. Bad. State, well, they are not really states, they are impermanent, so they are more like qualities of the mind that kind of come up every now and again. When you get into a jhana state, they cease, they end without remainder. Deliverance of wisdom here is the kind of the arahantship, the final deliverance of the mind, when the mind is liberated from the defilements once and for all. So this kind of implies both the deliverance of mind through samadhi, but also the deliverance of mind through the higher wisdom. So this really implies the stream enterer. The stream enterer is the one who understands these things, who has insight into these things. You know where the liberation of mind actually is. Engaged as he is in favoring and opposing, whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, he delights in that feeling, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As he does so, delight arises in him. Now delight in feeling is clinging, it is taking up, it is attachment basically. With his attachment as condition, being, bhava comes to be. With being as condition, birth. With birth as condition, old age and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So here you can see the dependent origination kind of working itself out, because we favor certain things, we like certain things in the world. We are already established in the world. You have certain things that you own, certain things that you consider yours. You already have a liking for those things. You favor them, and you oppose maybe other things that you don't like in this world. So, because of that, the feelings that you get from these things, you delight in that. When you you come back home and you see your house, you delight in your house. It is natural. This is my house, and you kind of go in there and you enjoy your staying in your house. You delight in that. It's natural. You can't really avoid that to some extent. And then because of that delight, because of that, you hold on to that house. This is my home. This is where I live. You hold on to it and you delight in it. And this is what is the clinging. This is what is the attachment. Attachment to your house, attachment to your relationship, attachment to anything else in the world that is dear to you and agreeable to you. And then right there your consciousness is sucked in. It is stuck on in a particular realm, in a particular way. And that consciousness, because it is stuck there, it will tend to continue in that same realm as you pass away. At the very least, make sure that you make lots of good karma in the meantime. Then you will go to a happy destination within that realm as a consequence. So this is the how things work out roughly in ordinary life. You should be able to see this in your own life if you look very carefully to see the dependent origination, see where you exist, know yourself well. One of the, I think, most important things about our meditation practice and also about going on retreats every now and again is to find out who we really are. In life very often things go so fast, things happen so quickly, we rush from one thing to another one, and sometimes we haven't really got clarity about our own inner life. What are our problems? What are our strengths? What are we attached to? What are we not attached to? One of the things you can do when you go on a meditation retreat is just learn more about yourself. And that learning is actually incredibly useful for you to be able to practice the Buddhist path later on. One of the most important things that I think everyone should really be doing in their life as a Buddhist is to overcome, especially the defilement of anger and ill will. This is so important. It creates so much trouble in our life. It creates so much bad karma, so many negative mind states. It's so problematic. And to be able to do that, you have to have some degree of clarity about where your problems are. You may be able to see that in ordinary life, but it's more obvious when you go on a retreat. So when you're on a retreat, because you're also taken out of your ordinary life, you reflect on your mind and you see, these are my problems. These are my attachment. This is my bhava. This is how I exist. And you see that there are certain people perhaps that you find very difficult in your life, And on retreat is a marvelous opportunity to reprogram yourself and to start to learn to see those people in a different way. And it's not that hard to do. People think this is so difficult. It's not that hard to do if you really invest your time, you really invest your effort into this. It is possible. I have done so myself over the past 22, 23 years being a monk, and I can tell you it works. Yeah, if you had seen me 23 years ago, you would know exactly what I mean. It works. It absolutely works. It's very, very powerful stuff. All you have to do is just to apply yourself in the right way. Know how to have compassion for people who are bad. Know how to look for the good qualities in people who have good qualities. And if you do that systematically, you will be able to overcome much, perhaps not absolutely everything, but a vast amount of any ill will or upset that is there. And we can always have less ill will, yeah? There's never too little ill will. There's no such thing as too little ill will. Oh, I've got to have a little bit of ill will, otherwise I haven't got anything done in life. Sometimes we hear these arguments, yeah? Arguments is that, well, ill will is good because it energizes me, and then I get the energy to do things. It's bad energy. It's the wrong energy. I feel like telling people that energy is not the right one. The energy is the metta is the right energy. The clarity of mind, that is the good energy. That is what makes you do the right thing in the world. So this is how it all works out. So know yourself and deal with those problems. Go on a retreat every now and again. And even if all you do on a retreat is just chill, yeah? Never go to a single meditation, just hang out, yeah? Go to the forest, go for a few walks. It's okay, yeah? Because it's nice. At least you are relaxing at ease, you're getting to know yourself a little bit. And what a wonderful thing that is if you can do just that much. Okay. So that is enough for now. Any points you want to bring up? Any questions, comments, anything else? Everyone happy? Okay, great. Nothing could be better than that. And next session I'm going to finish off what we have just started. And so see you back in about 15-20 minutes or so.